Hello everyone, welcome to Asia and Pacific Shows. Welcome to Asia and Pacific Shows. In this episode, I'm joining by Dr. Pooja Bhatt. We will discuss her books about the South China Sea issues. Let me first introduce you Dr. Pooja. Who is Dr. Pooja? Dr. Pooja is the author of the Deciphering South China Sea, of the book titled Nine Dash Line, Deciphering the South China Sea Conundrum. Her books actually published in 2020, but republished by Routledge in 2024. Pooja was a part of the prestigious Indian Navy history book, A Decade of Transformation, the Indian Navy 2011-2021, released by the Honorable President of India on Navy Day 2022. She is also a visiting research fellow at the Center of Air Power Studies, New Delhi. Previously, she worked as a consultant with the Policy Planning Research Division at the Ministry of External Affairs, India. Dr. Bhatt also taught as an assistant professor at the School of Defense and Strategic Studies at the reputed Rashtra Raksha University, Gandhinagar. She has worked with India's leading think tanks such as the Center for Air Power Studies, New Delhi, and Air Force Research Institute, and the Indian Council of World Affairs, Minister of External Affairs. She has published extensively on the several leading platforms in India and abroad, as well as has been a speaker on maritime issues at various reputed international seminars, including the US Indo-Pacific Conference, Bangkok Chapter, CSIS Washington, D.C., Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam, Hanoi, East-West Center, Hawaii, amongst others. She had been invited by the US Naval War College, RI, to present her paper on maritime security and governance in 2020. She takes lectures in Indian Navy defense courses and programs on maritime issues. Dr. Pooja Bhatt received her doctoral degree from the School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi in 2021. She has studied the Philippines as her case study both during her MPhil dissertation and PhD thesis. She holds an MA in International Relations and an MPhil in Diplomacy and Disarmament from Geneva. She also holds a diploma in the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Seas, UNCLOS, from the Yesu Academy, Korean Maritime Institute. Welcome, Dr. Pooja. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Lokman, for having me for the second time. I enjoyed your show last time and I'm looking forward to this one as well.
Yes, Dr. Pooja, before we enter our shows and start questions, can you just introduce your book briefly for more audiences?
Yeah, sure.
Well, what is the story of the book, how it started?
Okay, the story of the book has to be mentioned here. So, this book was released in 2020. The idea of the book actually came just after the PCA verdict on South China Sea in 2016 had come out. And from Indian context, it was not a big thing that time. And we barely saw the news about South China Sea before that. And even after 2016 June verdict, we never used to see much about how South China Sea is important for anyone else except the countries facing the issue. So that's when I started researching on the topic, and I realized that South China Sea issue is going to be bigger in the coming times that we are expecting at this moment in 2016. And during that time, I started writing the book, and 2020 the book was released just before the COVID. And now in 2024, the book has already seen two republications by the local publisher, which is Knowledge World, which is the first publisher of my book. And in 2024 June, I'm happy to announce that Routledge is republishing my book, and this will be the third publication of the book. So I think we have seen the entire journey for the book, as well as the issue of South China Sea is much more important from Indian perspective as you see it now as.
Congratulations once more again for your republication.
Thank
and
you.
Later for audience, I'm gonna drop the link of the books on Amazon or whether on Routledge under the video. Then the people can order the hard copy, whether in Kindle.
Yes.
Now, Dr. Pooja, we will start with the 9-dash line. Can you provide in depth analyze what distinguishes the 9-dash line from the other maritime boundaries and how its historical significance has shaped not only regional geopolitics but also the global maritime governance system.
I think it's the excellent question to start this entire conversation. That what is why does a nine dashed line and how does it distinguish from other maritime boundaries? Because it has no relevance with other maritime boundaries. Maritime boundaries are basically either delimited under international laws, which is provided by United Nations Convention of the Law of the Seas, UNCLOS, as we know. They provide for the maritime boundaries, or they are decided between the two countries based on certain, historic perspectives. Nine dash line, on the other hand, has no such perspective. Neither it has a historical perspective, nor it has a geographical perspective. Or it is very well, it'd be very wise to say that nine dash line per se is absolutely arbitrary. It has no value, no meaning whatsoever when it comes to international geopolitics, international law, and therefore the entire concept of nine dash line would be the very first time we'll see a country drawing certain dots and lines which has no meaning whatsoever, but using those dashes and lines, it is using it against those countries who have the legal claims on maritime delimitation zones, such as their exclusive economic zones and their other maritime rights and claims such as islands and landforms and the resources where there within. And with these kind of arbitrary lines, China is trying to assert the other countries' rights and claims. So this is the entire story of nine dash line, and this is why we need to understand that why one country's unilateral posture can impact geopolitics and other various other countries. Uh, Lokman, you're muted.
Apologize. I said, do you think that the China successfully implemented this non-dash line, given the other stakeholders of the South China Sea, like the Vietnam's or the Filipinos' claims and involvements to the South China Sea?
See, there are two parts to it. One is whether China has drawn these lines, used these lines, and second is the implementation of those lines. China has unilaterally drawn these lines, and in 2013 it came out with this map, showing these dashes, and that was submitted to the UN in 2013 for the very first time, to 2009 for the very first time, to show that these are nine dashes. And that was the very first time the world had seen these nine dashes. So drawing is one thing, but after that, when UN asked, and so many other countries, when they asked China at the UN level, at the PCA level, that what are the legal basis for this, what are the historical basis for this, China would not provide anything, honestly, except saying these are, drawn from or derived from the 1949 Kuomintang government's maps, which again are very doubtful by several other scholars. This has no legal basis. So, unilateral drawing of a map is a different thing. Implementation is a different thing. So, I don't think the implementation has been successful, because had it been successful, it would have shown the legality of these lines, which is not there. And that is why so many countries like Philippines and Vietnam have you know verbally shown their dissatisfaction with the line. They have sent out so many diplomatic notes to China. But that means that this is the implementation has not been successful. It is not legal. It is not agreed by other countries. So this is what we have to understand.
So, again, Dr. Pooja, can we say that when we're considering the recent developments in international law and maritime disputes, could you delve a little bit deeper into the legal basis of China's claims within the Nine Dash Line, and including any recent legal precedents or interpretations that might have emerged?
Right. So as I mentioned earlier, also there is no legal basis for this line. Neither there is a was historical basis that China never could provide a historical reasons for these lines. It also could not provide any legal basis for these lines because under international maritime law, only the waters up to 200 nautical miles are the limit that you can claim, and then beyond that, continental shelf. But that comes in a different category. So these are the limits of claims that you can claim under international maritime law. However, if you see the bottommost point of nine dash line, it lies way beyond 400 nautical miles for China. So in no way it is legally correct for China to claim the waters which are way beyond its maritime borders under international law. Having signed UNCLOS also, China is also a member for UNCLOS. So, if you're a member, you are supposed to be the decision of UNCLOS should be binding on you. And if UNCLOS says that 200 nautical miles should be your outermost maritime limit, China has not agreed to it. So, it is not legal per se. What has happened recently is also in last year, August 2023, if you remember, China quietly has added one more line next to the Taiwanese island. And that created a lot of uproar within the international community because, on one hand, China says that this is their domestic, reasoning of doing it. They have their domestic, constituency legal provisions for it. That's why they are doing it, and that's why their internal maps have been made that way. However, because it is lying very close to international waters and also Taiwan has been included for the first time in this nine dash line, a lot of countries are seeing it as a gradual incrementalism towards absorbing other countries' maritime rights as well as their territorial borders as well. So these are recent, developments have happened that we were thinking that nine dash line would be it, and China might not go further with this. What we are seeing is that is not the end of it. China is increasing its claims over South China Sea, and it is again gone till Taiwan, with which recently it is having these kind of disputes we have been watching for past several months.
So, how has the non-dash line contributed to China's broad strategic goals and inspirations, both regionally and in global level, as it continues its trajectory towards becoming a dominant global power and also global naval power, and what implication does hold for this international order or the regional countries? What will be your opinion?
Okay, so my entire book is actually based on this question, what you just now asked. That how does nine dash line matter to China? Like, are these just some dashes that China has put across in the seas and oceans, and there is no meaning to it? But that is what my book actually delved into. That why so nine dash line is way important than just the military angle or the artificial island that we have been seeing being developed in those Spratly group of islands and Carousel group of islands. It is more than that. So what I the hypothesis or the thesis that my books puts through is that uh, the entire nine dash line concept is heart of China's vision towards global leadership. As we know, since 2013, the Chinese leadership have this global power vision under certain presidents, starting from Hu Jintao, and now President Xi Jinping also wants that. So to become this global power, currently you need two things. You need to be economically very powerful, so that you have trade links everywhere, and once the if you're economically powerful, you will definitely rivaling US and surpassing US as the next global power. Second thing is you have to be militarily powerful, because if you have your trade going, you have a trade, and sea lanes are the biggest conduit of trade. So if your trade is passing through the seas, your military has to protect it. So these two things have to be very powerful. And then other thing is to become that kind of powerful nation, China has to also surpass its background, which is the South China Sea. The South China Sea, if you see in the globe on the map, it is also surrounded by several countries as well as group of islands, such as Guam and other islands. What happens is right now is these all most of these islands are actually support or and the countries are supported by US, and US has their bases. So in turn, China sees itself bounded to its own backyard because of US naval presence. Whether you talk about Philippines, whether you talk about Japan, whether you talk about Korea, whether you talk about Guam, so in its own backyard it's trapped, and to become this global power, it has to move out of its what we call its first and second island chain of islands. So that is why China, we are seeing that South China Sea becomes at the center of China's global dream. It has to come out. Not only it has to emerge very powerful at South China Sea entire region, but also has to come out of that region to spread itself globally. So that is
So,
why. Sorry. Yes.
is it possible to say that the South China Sea is a key for China's global power projections
Correct.
capability or
Correct.
open to the
Correct.
Pacific? Because without fully implement or taking under the control the South China Sea, will not be able to bridge the first island chain and open the Pacific. And without becoming a global naval power, I think it is impossible to become a global superpower. Am I right?
Correct. Absolutely correct. You got it right. And that's what I was trying to say, that you have to be a global maritime power. The reason that US is powerful is because it, at one point of time, like it held most of the maritime trade. Also, it had the most powerful navy in the entire world. And China has learned its lesson from the US that if you want to uh, parallel US or even surpass US, you have to have the similar characteristics. You have to rival the US in the similar way. So in those context, I want to argue in my book that the 9 dash line or the 10 dash line, if you call it, it lies at the heart of China's global maritime power vision and strategy, and that is how China is not only trying to just another angle that my book wanted to put across is just not the military or the economic, um, power that China is trying to portray in South China Sea. But South China Sea also will see increasing legal issues, increasing environmental issues, and increasing these regional geopolitics, because ASEAN countries are very closely associated economically also with China, and also they are facing China's wrath in terms of Chinese aggression in their territorial borders and things like that. So I think all these angles, if you see 5 and 6 angles, 9 dash line remains at the core of it.
So, Dr. Pooja, given the multifaceted nature of the territorial disputes in this region in South China Sea, what are the latest insights into the complex dynamics among the littoral states, and including any recent diplomatic initiatives to cooperate efforts aimed at managing the tensions and promoting the stability in the region, especially between the China and the US, or between the China and the regional countries or stakeholders of the South China Sea?
Correct. That's a very good question. So, what has happened now, and we have seen it also, that because of Chinese aggressive presence in South China Sea, as well at the same time, China being the largest trading partner of ASEAN countries, they actually remain in this tight grip hold of each other. So it was very important for ASEAN countries to come out of Chinese grip economically, and what we are currently seeing is a result of that. All these South Asian countries, if you see, Vietnam, Philippines, Malaysia, and other non South China Sea claimant countries also, diversifying their partners beyond China. So it's not that they are looking for new trade partners. They are seeking more developmental partners. They are seeking more military partners. And a lot of countries, including US and so many Western countries, are happy to jump in that space because they also see South China Sea as a stake for them. As you rightly mentioned, they are stakeholders for that region, because a lot of these countries, like such as Britain and other countries, France, They have their old historical ties with certain beyond countries, the British Indian Ocean territories, and France also has certain territories. So they have this historical connection. At the same time, there a lot of trade passes through that region. On the other hand, if you see in Europe as a whole, they see South China Sea issue as more of a democratic equality, justice, rule of law from that frame of angle. So they want to remain involved in South China Sea because they see the democratic institutions are failing there, the rule of law is failing there. So they want to pitch in those ways. So there is an entire diversified approach to entire South China Sea. We are seeing countries providing military help to South China Sea countries, countries providing developmental help to South China Sea, infrastructure help. We see several new initiatives that have come across, including the supply chain resilience initiative. Then we see military exercises happening under Quad, beyond Quad, multilateral exercises happening. This is happening at multilateral level. At the bilateral level also, a lot of countries are having these bilateral relations with with South China Sea countries. Other thing that I've been also noticing since then has been this increase of military trade. If you and CIPRI also has again and again each year they have mentioned that military trade of each of these countries are increased. These countries are not only buying from US, but they are also buying for as many as 30 international vendors belonging to several countries. So there is also there is this entire debate amongst each of these South China Sea countries to develop themselves militarily also. So they are doing it through military training with extra regional countries such as US, India, and other countries who are willing to help. They are buying weapons. They are developing their own weapons. So certain countries like Philippines are also now on track of developing their own weapons. So we are seeing the entire umbrella of events happening for countries to resist this unilateral aggression against China.
So, just a small point, Dr. Pooja, will this development trigger, you claim that will trigger to any arms race in the region?
Yeah. Sadly, that is the case we are seeing. You're right. We have seen this entire and Southeast Asia and South Asia, according to CIPRI also. It means it's just not the observation, but recorded by CIPRI that it's become the one of the world's most highest weapon importing region and country with a growing amount of arms race. So it's very concerning that because of this event, we are seeing a region, Southeast Asia and South Asia, which is otherwise economically maybe middle class, and then we are not very rich countries. Our developmental indexes are not very high. We have issues like food security and water security, and other issues that societal issues that we have. Despite having all these issues, countries are focusing their little GDPs into buying these weapons, and just for this reason. So this, which is a very sad even to see.
So, in light of evolving security challenges and shifts in this region, particularly with China's ongoing military modernization efforts, could you provide a comprehensive assessment of the current security dynamics in South China Sea, and highlighting the roles and capabilities of the PLA and PLA Navy and Coast Guard and Maritime Military, as well as any recent developments or incidents that have impacted the security landscape? I think we can give some examples from the latest fired water cannon between the Philippines and the Chinese Coast Guard.
Correct. Uh, over the years, we have seen this huge modernization program being undertaken by PLA, by overall, and PLA Navy and Rocket Forces otherwise. And now the Rocket Forces have been also restructured recently as so now we have seeing and also the military modernization under that entire paradigm. We have this new aircraft carrier that China has recently launched. So now we have China having more or less three military aircraft carriers in the region, which is again a very concerning thing for the region. We are seeing more missile by developments by China. We are seeing more new technologies of aircraft that are being introduced by China, more new kind of rocket technologies that we have been seeing by China. This is on the military side only, but as my book also mentioned, and I keep on saying that military is just one angle at it. If you see what China has been approaching entire South China Sea has been from various angles. One of the angles would be the legal angle that you see. China has been, disregarding the entire clause and going ahead with developing its extending its 9-to 10 line. Then it is going ahead with the encroaching other countries' maritime, areas. Now we are seeing the recent Ionjin shoal issue that we've been seeing with Philippines, that it actually belongs to Philippines within its easy, and China has been blockading that the resupply missions that have been going through there. So this is another angle that China, it is kind of lawfare. You are actually disregarding law at every given moment. Another angle that we are seeing China, what China has been doing is about the environmental degradation, which is very important, which was now we have started speaking about it. The entire islands that were made by China, 7 islands that China had made, and now it is on to eighth one. These islands were reclaimed from coral reefs. So the coral reefs were dumped with the artificial sand, and then the entire artificial islands were created. There was huge environmental degradation that was done by China while making these islands. So China being a member of all these international environmental negotiations, it is disregarding the environmental negotiation commitments that it has made. Recently, now we are seeing that it is developing one more island called Sabina Shoal, which is very closer to Philippines again. And the same story is there. China has been destroying coral there. So what I'm trying to say is the issue of South China Sea has to be approached by several angles. Another angle that we keep missing is how China has been renaming, these maritime related zones that it is developing. It is renaming in its Chinese name, and these renaming we might take it very casually at this moment, but it is for the eternity, for the future generations who will not even remember that these zones were never Chinese. So the future generations would see that these zones as Chinese, and China has been renaming them. So this is the entire widespread issues that we need to focus beyond the military angle that we are just focusing at the moment. And I don't think international community is still doing enough in that regard. Means I'm sure the countries are trying to approach it through bilateral means. Philippines have been the most aggressive at the moment, sending out a lot of demarches to China. Vietnam has done some of the other cases, but I think international community needs to take a larger worldview of South China Sea by just not focusing on what happening militarily. That is one part of it. That is crucial part of it. But I think there are so many other issues that are also happening like at the parallel level, which the international community needs to focus as stakeholders in South China Sea, as stakeholders in the peace and security of the region, and also responsible global citizens.
Okay, my next question is Dr. Pooja. With the South China Sea serving as a vital maritime artery for the global trade and commerce, what are the contemporary economic implications and strategic interests of the key stakeholders, including littoral states, major powers like the US and European countries, and also India, and international organizations, and how recent economic trends and developments influenced their behavior and interactions in this region? Because I think that sometimes the tensions has become uh, very intense, and sometimes even the latest situation between the Philippines and the China bring a new concern for international society or the stakeholders.
Right. So I will see this way. the entire concept of Belt and Road Initiative, the Maritime Silk Route, was passing through South China Sea, the maritime part of it. So therefore, for China, protection of South China Sea and its sea line of communications beyond is very important for its economic security because its entire trade depends upon BRI. But China is not the only country that has its trade passing through South China Sea. India's owns 55-60% of trade passes through South China Sea because India has its partners such as Japan, Korea, and Taiwan. Where we do a lot of trading with these countries, and we are just one. Similarly, a lot of regional countries, a lot of Western Asian oil goes through South China Sea to the to the developing and developed economies in East Northeast Asia, Japan, Korea, and other countries. So I think that entire trade line, and we have seen this map again and again, that economically, the trade routes of this region has been the hotspot for several years. So economically, this region has been very important. Having said that, I would want to also want to bring this angle that a lot of scholars keep telling that the trade will be disrupted, and there will be South China Sea if anything happens in South China Sea. I have this question to be asked that if China's entire prosperity, growth depends upon BRI, and BRI passes through South China Sea, and its entire and its market depend upon ASEAN region and beyond South China Sea. How can China survive by creating a long-term economic crisis in South China Sea? It cannot. It will be the first country to be affected by such a crisis. So, therefore, we need to take an overall view of this issue that if there is economic blockade, if we see happening, is China will be affected at one go. At the same time, rest of the world will be also affected. So, any kind of economic blockade, any kind of sanctions, any kind of withdrawal of economic activity will have a cascading global economic effect, because if you remember in 1997 2007, the economic crisis of Asia, which is also known as Asian economic crisis, led to a worldwide economic downturn. And it was 97, and where the Asian markets were not even strong enough. Now we are the heart of economic market, the entire South Asia, Southeast Asian region. So the moment there is an economic crisis happening in South China Sea, it is going to happen at the global level also. So we need to keep this thing in mind, that why South China Sea and the trade through South China Sea needs to be protected pretty well. We need to ensure that it is not disrupted, because any kind of disruption will have global impacts, and we cannot. And with the Ukraine war happening and the Middle East crisis happening, we cannot have one more hotspot where we can we will lose a lot of lives and money.
Dr. Pooja, what are the latest findings regarding the environmental challenge? Because this is another important side of the South China Sea facing, including the impact of the climate change and marine pollution and overfishing, and how are these factors interacting with geopolitical tensions and security concerns to shape the overall regional dynamics and the security landscape.
We are already aware that China has overfished the waters of South China Sea with its distant water fishing, maritime militia, whatever you call them. So these are small fishermen who have done all these, fishing for, and so this entire region is empty. All these littoral state of South China Sea, which are actually dependent upon the South China Sea waters for their fishing as economic activity, they've already lost on that one. Entire South China Sea is devoid of fish. What has happened because of that is not only the flora and fauna, because we know that it's in a circle. The fish will feed in phytoplankton, and the entire circle goes on with the oxygen supply. The entire cycle has been disrupted. Now the corals and flora fauna of South China Sea is deeply affected because of that. We see a lot of environmental and marine degradation happening within South China Sea waters. That is one level. Second level, when we talk about, is these distant water fishing fleets of China are now moving up, or outwards to as far as Atlantic Ocean. They are devouring the seas and oceans by overfishing. IUU fishing has become a big threat, and not just China. Now other countries, smaller, fishermen from other countries are also there. So IUU fishing has become a very prevalent trend. It not only impacts your the sustainable fishing practices, which we lose fish faster than we they replenish, but we also are we are harming the entire environment. We are taking away the fishing the high quality fish in a more unsustainable manner. So the entire chain is happening there. Coming to other issues of climate change that we've been seeing are these artificial island building, which I've already spoken about. That how artificial island building is again environmentally degrading phenomena which is being happening at this moment. We're also seeing that China is coming with these small nuclear reactors on their ships, which again is very damaging thing, because these kind of submarines or these kind of nuclear powered vessels are again environmentally a threatening reason. So I think these are small activities which are we are not focusing very much right now, but over the time these are all adding to the marine pollution. Marine plastics, if you see, is I think one of the biggest issues. The oil spill that we see every time that these ships do, that causes immense problem for the oil cleaning agencies. They are not easy to remove. They are not easy to clean. Again, then the climate change issues that we are seeing with the change of climate change, and I need to also mention about how it will impact the future trends of our baselines, which we again are not talking right now. But as the climate change will happen, the water sea level will rise, and our baselines will shift backwards, right? So that way, our easy, our territorial waters will also move backwards. How will countries react to that? Would the countries accept that? They want to artificially, enlarge their eases, and then again, what happens? The countries will fight again for their maritime delimitation zones. So these are so many new emerging issues that are coming. Um, then we are seeing a lot of undersea developments happening that we're not discussing. There are new technologies coming up in terms of autonomous vehicles that are there. A lot of submarines which are autonomous by their actions. They can be remotely controlled. There are various shapes, and if you talk to people on ground, they know that there are a whole range of autonomous vehicles which are being operated, not by just by China, but several other countries in the region. So these are all emerging issues. Undersea cables another issue that we see. So we have to start focusing. That is just not the South China Sea anymore. Now this is emerging out of South China Sea issue, and everyone is getting affected because of that.
I think this the climate change part or the pollution part of the South China Sea is important and different than other issues, because as we see on the reports or the news, I think this is a mutual point between, especially between the US and China, in order to agree on some problems, or little bit approach to each other, instead of every time being in crisis. So what will be your take, Dr. Pooja? Because I think the region is the most populous, one of the world's most populous region of the world, including the China's and India. And when we look at the environmental change, I think the South China Sea doesn't have any alternative. You mentioned to the submarine cable and the internet cables. The I just read on a report they proposed a new submarine cables way through the Indonesia to bypass the South China Sea. But this region also has the earthquake and like the tsunamis. It is, cannot be alternative to the South China Sea. So these countries should come to on the table on the common points, which will affect not only China or not only the Philippines or other ASEAN countries. They will affect every people, maybe in the fish and the entire world. Maybe what will be your comment on these sections?
This is a very interesting question because I would say the answers coming from various angles to it. You're right. South China Sea is common to several countries, and it's only one region that they have, and they have to cooperate on that region, and they have no other option. They can't keep on, having conflict and competition between them when the region remains common for them for eternity. So these issues that you're talking about, like climate change, undersea cables, the all these issues are transnational in nature. Not one country can control it or use it for their own benefit. They have to cooperate with other countries. So it is very important for them to sit together and start negotiating that how they want to tackle the issues such as climate change, rising sea levels, and the implications of that, the diminishing flora and fauna of the region, the damage due to natural disasters to the region. How are they going to tackle it? They're not going to tackle it. They cannot tackle it alone because first they don't have the capability on their own. Second, even if they have the capability, the zone is too big for a single country to take control of, right? So, so they need to cooperate. The problem becomes after that. Even if these countries come together, and I see it this way, and this is a personal view on this, that China, what I have noticed from my study, that China negotiate from the power, from the position of power. So even if there is a table where the South China Sea countries sit and then China sits, the negotiations will be always flip-sided. We have seen it in the case of code of conduct that was being negotiated since 2002, and we haven't reached anywhere yet. That and the entire the reason because we cannot see a cooperative, equitable conversation between these countries because China cannot converse from a point of cooperation at the from the point of equitability. It always have to talk from one side. The conversation is always one sided. So even if we talk about a framework where all South China Sea countries can come together, the framework will be more or less managed by China, and then we again reach to the ground zero problem. We so there we do not see any cooperation happening when only one country is going to dictate the norms, the terms, the membership, the agenda of any regional cooperative mechanism. And so this is my different views of looking at it, that yes, cooperation is the only way, but cooperation is going to be difficult because we have a country which cannot cooperate with others as equals. It will always see itself as superior, and that always makes diplomatic negotiation or conversations difficult.
Okay, Dr. Pooja, I think we have a few questions. I'm going to bring the audience questions on the screen. Emerald. What is Dr. Pooja's view on how the Quad could empower the Philippines by leveraging the combined strength of Australia, Japan, and US to address and counterbalance China's influence in the South China Sea? Yes, the Quad is a new initiative
Yes.
and different than Quad
So
also.
security quad, yes. So yeah, so the reason being squad has come into picture because there are two reasons. For first, Philippines and all these countries, most of these countries are facing this direct maritime threat from China in the region. So it is easier for them to come together because their threat is very imminent and very direct. Second reason why, despite these three countries having already a formation of quad with India, still going for a squad with Philippines is because Philippines can provide what India cannot provide. Those are bases. because of the reciprocal arrangement with because Philippines remains a non-NATO ally to the US. US has this long-standing presence in the Philippines, so Philippines could provide those bases which are very necessary in terms of if there is kind of any kind of conflict or a war. Bases for these countries are very is in the region is very important. I think these are the two reasons why Squad came into picture and came it very quickly. And I see that Squad is only going to complement the Quad's initiatives. Quad is basically now diversified by taking various angles of security, such as human security, economic security, and other kind of security that we are talking about. Squad, on the other hand, is very much focused on military security. So I think they're only complementing each other's efforts in achieving a more, rule-based maritime international law and order.
Dr. Paul, just come to my mind. Why so many military groups, bilateral, multilateral, trilateral group has been established between the US and its alliances? It's because the initial one not being successful, or just they proliferate many other the groups regrouping, or like there is a squad, and previously there was a quad, and also there is another AUKUS, or between Philippines, Japan, and another military groups partnership are being discussed. So what is the reason behind this too many groups establish each year, establish a different, sometimes per month establish a different groups? Why the initial ones aren't successful, or on the other hand, from the China's point of view, is just this military grouping target the China, or target China because of the natural growing of China, because of the containment of China? What's the reason? What will be your opinion on these issues?
You're very right about this observation about why so many multilateral groupings that we are seeing. Answer is because the Cold War multilateral groupings which were already present in the region became a bit rudimentary in their ways of operation and their existence. So they were not clearly working, such as ASEAN and other regional groupings. They're not working, they're not as cohesive because whatever the reasons of their existence was has now diversified. They have new reasons, they have new issues going on, and they have issues amongst themselves. On the other hand, we are seeing this sudden emergence of minilaterals or plurilaterals. And these minilaterals are coming into existence solely because these they are small, two based of two, three, four countries, which have very direct, imminent reasons to come together, and most of it are based upon security, either economic reasons. Also, they are very issue based in their approach. So all these minilaterals, if you see, which are emerging, have very specific mutual interest in one or two issue based areas, and that helps in working for them to work together. Because what happens is, in a bigger format of multilateralism, not all countries can come together into consensus, while if you have very issue based small minilaterals or plurilaterals, it is easier for them to quickly build consensus and start their action. So that is the reason that why we are seeing so many millilaterals coming. And of course, China has become a very big reason why all these millilaterals that you're talking about, AUKUS, Squad, that have quickly emerged within last 2 3 years, because China has been seen this very imminent threat. On the region of, if you ask that whether these countries are coming together to challenge China's rise, I think it's a very complicated question, because I think China's rise is not peaceful. China's rise has been very aggressive. So these countries are coming together because they are seeing threat from China's rise, and this threat is leading these countries to come together and respond to it, and whichever ways they can. If it's military cooperation they are doing, if it is economic cooperation they are doing, so they're finding different ways to fight China's unilateral aggressiveness, which is otherwise very difficult for them to handle all by themselves.
Okay. Next question. Yes, Gabriel's Cruz. How does the presence of China's spy ship in the Indian Ocean raise security concerns for India, and what strategic measures should India consider to mitigate these concerns and safeguard its national interests? Actually, it is not related to our topic, but it's up to you, Pooja.
No. This is perfectly fine because,
Yes.
of course, the South China Sea issue is being now, the impact of it is seen in Indian Ocean. So, coming to this question, which is a very interesting question, that why Chinese spy ship are seen in Indian Ocean region. Um, there are two reasons for this. So one, every time it has been noticed that India is going to do a missile test or any, any new technology testing, which is done in Bay of Bengal, which is on the west eastern part of India, where our launches take place. Chinese vessels have been, because we provide NOTAM, notice to the airmen, to clear out that area with a particular duration, that you can't fly. This becomes a no fly zone. It is during those times we see a lot of spy ships around Indian waters. So there is this understanding that it is basically to understand China's missile success, how, what is the range of it, what are the kind of missiles India is developing, what are the technological developments, what are the range, what are the accuracy, those kind of data China want to gather basically from India, because India is the next threat to China in terms of military prowess. Other reason that why we see these research vessels, if we talk about, is because of their submarine operations. So for submarine operation, you need to understand the sea levels and sea salinity, their thermocline, their temperatures, and there are various other factors under the sea that you need to understand even before you deploy your submarines. So these resource vessels, what they actually are trying to do is to find out that undersea information about sea depth, the kind of crevices the undersea has, the kind of temperature sea the Indian Ocean has, the kind of the other technical details that are required for the operation of submarines, because China wants to deploy more and more submarines outside South China Sea, because submarines in a way provide this entire concept of sea denial to other its adversary, and it is very important for a growing power to have these submarine operational in open seas. So these are two reasons why we see so many research vessels nowadays in Indian Ocean region.
So, Pooja, how India will manage these the China spy ships or data collecting to protect its national interests? Because when China claims, immediately they say it's under the freedom of navigation or under its bilateral relations with the countries, Indian Ocean region countries like Sri Lanka or like Maldives. How India can manage its national interests and security under these frameworks?
China is absolutely correct when it says that it can do the research and everything in high seas, because it's allowed by international law. So there is little India can do about Chinese research vessels when it is in the high seas and beyond India's easy. And even if they're collecting data, we can't do much. But this is for sure that the entire infrastructure of information gathering is pretty strong, and basically even before Chinese research vessels enter Indian Ocean region through Malacca, Sunda, and whatever states are there, India is aware, and rest of the region is also aware. Basically, these are the ships coming. So we are constantly monitoring their movement. India is monitoring their movement. They know what these vessels are, how long they are staying, what kind of data they've been collecting, and there have been certain measures that have been taken by Indian security agencies to at least block certain kind of data which can be detrimental to Indian national interest, for the for by so that these vessels cannot gather. On the other hand, when you talk about the bilateral relations that China has with the Indian Ocean countries, India definitely cannot do about anything about bilateral countries, because it is the matter of two sovereign nations about it. But it is also the constant effort by Indian agencies to keep these countries updated and involved in these kind of conversations by telling them that these research vessels are not very benign by their purpose. Like in Sri Lanka, we have done it. In Maldives, we have tried to do it by telling them that we need to understand these research vessels have reasons to be there which can be harmful for us in the longer interest. So I think the kind of awareness that the regional countries are trying to bring about is what India is trying to do in this issue.
Actually, Dr. Pooja, is the recent we saw on the news, India sent the warships to the South China Sea, is a kind of the answer to the China's spy ships to send warships to the South China Sea through the Singapore.
As I just said, high seas are open to all. Yeah,
Yes,
just
it's
as
under freedom of navigation.
China is under freedom of navigation, just as China can travel in Indian Ocean, Indian ships can go to South China Sea waters. I think it is allowed under international law, and I think every country can do that.
Oh, okay, just there is another question. Prakriti, Prayan blocks. Dr. Pooja, how effective will be a regional military security bloc of ASEAN and countries affected by China, such as Taiwan, Philippines, Japan, to name a few? These two backed by USA.
See, the problem with ASEAN is that it is difficult to bring certain kind of coherence when it comes to these kind of issues, when China is involved. So, a military organization coming from ASEAN against China looks a bit difficult, though ASEAN has conducted a military exercise quite recently. It was the first maritime exercise they did last year. So I think ASEAN is trying to commit to it terms that they need to develop itself militarily, and they all these 10, 11 countries have to come together. But I think they also realize that they have this scope of their effectiveness when it comes to vis-a-vis China. So I think they're not being overly aggressive about going anti-China, but I think they're also at the same time developing their collaborating with each other, putting all their resources together and try to build up themselves militarily. But I don't see them coming against China anytime soon.
Dr. Pooja, now I think we have less than 3 minutes. I'm just asking one small question. Since you published your books, non-line, what kind of the developments happened until now? Do you feeling any update on your books, or for example, China published another map, like a 10-line map. Do you think the change to your title of your books, or in terms of the content, do you need to change anything?
Except I think the title. I think I should start with the title. I should, I think, rewrite another book as 10-line, and also update in all the military and the regional developments that have happened in terms of new island building and Philippines being aggressive now against like Philippines was one country which was not as aggressive till the time I was writing this book. And now that time it was Vietnam, and now it's Philippines all of a sudden. And Philippines has become the powerful country in the region who is going against China at the moment. So I think these are the kind of developments I want to bring across. Also, India's evolving position of South China Sea, because 2016 when to 17 when I was writing the book, India was very neutral about the South China Sea. Now you see our external affairs minister going to Philippines and saying we support Philippines position in South China Sea, and we support the freedom of navigation and rule of law in South China Sea. These kind of developments are very important that have happened in last 5-6 years, and I think if I have to write, I will write all about it.
I'm asking these questions because it is the most difficult part of the researchers or scholars or of international relations. Sometimes the arguments even can change per second. The similar thing happened to me during my PhD thesis. I'm writing my arguments, then later I saw that Nancy Pelosi is to the Taiwan, and entire argument gone over. This is
No,
the
no,
most difficult part, I think.
no, totally. I understand. That is very difficult. Thankfully, I'm so glad that that would not be the case. I think whatever presumptions I had about whatever hypothesis and thesis was the book was, I think the developments in the recent times have been according to that. So I think I feel pretty confident of stargazing basically and looking into the future and telling certain things which I now see happening at the moment. So it's a pretty happy thing for me as a researcher.
Yes, we are operating in a very, how we can say, update field.
Yes,
And it is difficult to make a strong argument. Okay, Dr.
absolutely.
Pooja, thank you very much for joining me. It's an absolute pleasure for me and my audiences. For your books, I'm gonna update, drop the book links on the YouTube video. The record will be available immediately, and for audiences, you can order Dr. Pooja's book, one of the most important book I think about the South China Sea, and the region also is important in terms of energy, security, politics, geopolitics, military, whatever you want. I believe that you will find on the content of the inside the books of Dr. Pooja. And thank you, Dr. Pooja, once again for joining me.
Thank you so much, Lokman, for having me. I completely enjoyed the conversations, and I hope the audience also liked the conversation. And I hope some of you would definitely would like to read the book, if and it's available on Amazon now. It will be available with the Rutledge website very soon. So, and I think on Kindle as well. So, whatever your pick is, please do read, comment, and give the feedback about how you feel about it. And thank you, Lokman, again.
Thank you. And for audiences, please subscribe to our channel and share with your networks. Okay. Have a
Thank
nice day.
you.
Have a good night.